So we've got a great array of speakers. Thank you again for joining us. Please do ask questions in the Q&A function, but without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our CEO and founder, Val Miftakhov, to walk through a fireside chat with Jill.
Thank you, Dom. Absolutely, and what a great day yesterday. Thank you all the speakers and the participants. Great questions, great panels, and looking forward to a great day today as well. Do we have Jill on the line?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying to start my video. Here we go. Always technical problems. Hi, Val. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Hi, Jill. So great to have you here. Very, very small introduction for Jill. Jill is a VP of Sustainability at American Airlines. And of course, American Airlines is a great partner of ZeroAvia and investor in ZeroAvia. So we're really happy to have their support. And of course, the largest airline, passenger airline out there. And so it's really, really important to see support from players like this in the market as we try to move the industry forward. So, Jill, if I may, I would like to ask you a couple of questions to see how American thinks about things about the sustainability, hydrogen, and transition to the sustainable future. So the first one, from the routes to the revenue to passengers, American is the greatest, largest airline out there. So do you feel a responsibility to act on these challenges?
Well, we absolutely do. I mean, we burned in 2019, so the last year before COVID. We used 4.5 billion gallons of jet fuel. I think we're the largest jet fuel buyer in the world, even exceeding, I think, the U.S. military. So that's a really daunting number. That's the number that is on my mind all the time. And I think it's worth saying again. I know this audience knows this, but I just think it's worth repeating, particularly from an aviation perspective, right? That the challenge of climate change is urgent and imminent, and we all have this responsibility to act. And we certainly don't think that aviation, for example, gets a pass because the technologies aren't available. It's actually our responsibility to dive in and commit ourselves and help accelerate those technologies, even as maybe it forces us to kind of step out of what we do day to day, right? Aviation is a small share of global emissions today, but we're going to grow as a share, right, of the carbon budget. I heard on the video, the goal of the 2030 goal, right? We're going to grow as a share of that carbon budget because we don't have the technologies we need today, and other industries can move to decarbonize. I always say that I'm a little bit jealous of road transport, right, because they are moving so quickly. But we have to act now because everything you're working on today is going to bear fruit for us, in the future. And I think you can see the fact that the idea that we know that it's urgent is that, we set most of our climate goals during COVID, right? We committed to net zero even during COVID, even as we were taking the airline down. So I think you can kind of see our commitment in the things that we're doing today, including especially investing in you guys.
Great, thanks, Jill. And great to hear that sense of ownership. And we at ZeroAvia actually, as part of the company culture as well, promote this quite a bit. You own your problems, even if sometimes feels like there is a lot of other moving pieces, and everybody needs to plug in. But you do your part and you lead the industry and make it happen. So great to hear that American is taking that stance. So what is the strategy? How are you thinking about this? How are you going to take the airline forward?
So the whole strategy is really about collaboration. And I see that in how you guys have designed this, your discussion these days, right? We're going to invest in everything we can do that's really under our control. And unfortunately, that's a fairly small piece of what it's going to take for us to decarbonize, right? So we've invested in current technologies, right? We've done probably the biggest fleet renewal program of any in commercial aviation history. We've invested $24 billion in new planes. And so that's like the Maxes and the Neos. And so we have the youngest mainline fleet that we can operate of any major US network carrier today. And that's what we can operate today. But, we can't buy SAF and we can't buy new propulsion today. So we're, as I say, kind of stepping out of our comfort zone in things like sustainable aviation fuel, right? Where if we make offtake commitments, we can help those plants get built. We're an anchor partner to Breakthrough Energy Catalyst, where we've committed $100 million to invest in new technologies, including, by the way, green hydrogen. And the idea there is to help scale technologies that would otherwise not get funded, but have the potential to get to commercial scale. And then, of course, investing in new propulsion through you guys. We can't sit back and wait. And so we're really excited about the work you're doing.
Excellent, excellent. And the partnership with Catalyst, we're pretty excited about that as well.
Yes.
So of course we're Breakthrough Energy Ventures portfolio company, so that's all a family.
Yes.
So what role do you see for hydrogen specifically in those plans?
Mm-hmm. So let me just kind of start sort of at the beginning with SAF, right? So sustainable aviation fuel, right? To me, it's a little bit like magic, right? It's a drop into existing technologies and systems, right? But even the SAF market is incredibly tiny today, and even if with the most optimistic growth projections, it's not going to solve our whole emissions problem by 2050 or 2060, or maybe even in the century. And batteries could work. You can speak to this better than I can, right? Batteries are going to work for very tiny aircraft, but they're not going to work for the air bodies that we need, right? Our core business is flying much bigger aircraft, and we're going to need new propulsion. And so it's really encouraging to see the progress that you guys are making. It is daunting for me to think about replicating or creating a whole new fueling infrastructure. And one of the speakers on your video said, everything was difficult before it was done. And we have this very sophisticated fueling infrastructure that really gets fuel into the wing. And so trying to create something new is scary, but that's what we're going to have to do, because we're going to need this new propulsion. And it's been exciting to see there's a lot of innovation happening in green hydrogen. And I know that's obviously important to you guys too.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great that you picked up on that. Everything's difficult before it's done, and aviation has a history of very difficult things being done. The history of aviation is actually full of these dramatic moments of new innovation and new technologies being put in the market. So also in aviation, of course, this is a heavily regulated industry. There is a lot of role for regulator, a lot of role for governments. So what do you see the movements from the regulators, from the governments that might help us move through this transition?
Well, I think that's really critical. We're not going to get anything done if there isn't sort of a whole new level of collaboration between the public and private sector, and even new collaborations among the private sector, right? And so it's been very exciting in the United States. The Biden administration announced the SAF Grand Challenge. It was right after the election. The idea. Right after the election, the Biden folks, Gina McCarthy, invited all the U.S. airline CEOs to talk, and we thought, oh no, like we're about to get yelled at. And instead it was, okay, we know you guys need SAF. How are we going to help you get to SAF? And then soon after that, they announced the SAF Grand Challenge, which is a partnership among 3 different U.S. federal agencies. And I will tell you, I'm a long time participant in the political process in the United States. That does not happen. Like, agencies do not want to talk to each other or share anything. So that's sort of amazing. And they really want to produce enough SAF in the United States to fuel the entire U.S. aviation industry. So that's 35 billion gallons by 2050. And then, of course, I'm sure you guys are talking about the enactment of the Inflation Reduction Act of the United States, which is probably the most significant climate legislation in our history. And it includes, 2 important things for aviation. It has the first ever SAF tax credit, and it has grants for infrastructure. And I will just tell you, we've been lobbying, and the industry really came together to lobby for the SAF tax credit. And I remember once I went to the Hill and someone said to me, oh no, you're never going to get a new tax credit. That's impossible. So, and just 2 years later, like, it's done. So that's a lot of momentum, and I see governments kind of extending themselves and getting involved. So
that's great.
That's all really good news. I hope you're seeing the same help on the hydrogen side, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see government engagements actually across the world, really. And the United States has definitely picked up its pace lately, over the last 12 months especially, and with IRA and the previous enactments, it was great to see the increased momentum. So now, as we're talking about SAF and continuing on the combustion route, one of the things that's talked a lot these days is non-carbon effects of aviation. So, sustainable aviation fuel, at least in the liquid fuel form burnt in the engines, still might have the non-carbon effects, right? Even if you take the entirety of carbon out, you still have nitrogen oxides and water vapor and all those things. So how do you how do you think about that? Is American thinking about non-carbon at all, or if yes, how and how do you factor this into your strategy?
Yeah, it's sort of funny. We emitted 40 million tons of carbon in 2019, and so I think, well, carbon and jet fuel is a huge problem, and now I'm hearing more and more and about contrails, for example, and so there is this emerging scientific consensus. I think even just a few years ago, we would say, well, some contrails are cooling and some contrails are warming, and we don't know. But really, it's becoming clearer and clearer that contrails have a pretty significant net warming effect. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to speak to the science, but a number of different groups are working on the idea of contrail avoidance. And certainly you've seen this in the EU, and it's starting, US airlines are now picking up, and American in particular. We do have partnerships and are working on the idea of so let me just stop for a second. On contrails, there's two kind of bodies of ways to avoid creating a contrail, right? One is going to be the fuel, and the other is going to be, could you make an altitude adjustment? Could you make a change in your flight path so that you could fly without intersecting what generally is kind of a thin, shallow kind of contrail zone, right? Where there's the right atmospheric conditions of humidity and altitude, right? So this is an idea that works on paper, right? If you could really project where the contrail would be, then you could fly. If it's shallow, right, you could make a small altitude adjustment and actually avoid creating that. So we're at the beginning of running those kinds of test flights to see if we can really do it. There is a lot of complication, right? I mean, do the models actually work? Do they predict accurately? The skies are crowded, right? And there's ATC concerns, and obviously safety is first, second, and third is a priority, right? So are you actually able to make the altitude adjustment? Can you even check after the plane flew that we really didn't create the contrail, or we did? Is the satellite technology advanced enough to do that? What kind of technology do you have to give the pilot to actually make these kinds of changes? And then, of course, in the end, we're burning more fuel typically, right? If we're going to fly a little lower, we're going to burn a little more fuel. How do we balance, creating the contrail versus emitting more CO2? So it's complicated. It's exciting. It's exciting, honestly. Val, you live this every day because you actually are creating a hydrogen aircraft, but I don't have the ability to actually reduce Americans' warming impact in a very significant way, right? Because those technologies just don't exist yet. So this is an area where we can actually make some progress and help contribute to the learning.
Yeah, of course, and really exciting to hear that you're actually testing some things and partnering with folks. So it's not just about theoretical explorations anymore. So this is really exciting. This is already sort of shown through a couple of times through our just conversation in the last 10 minutes that you're taking this can-do attitude and just push forward with it. So that's really great. And of course, on the contrail side and non-CO2 impacts, we're working on the technology, and some other companies as well, hydrogen electric, so non-combustion, which should help once we get to those size of aircraft and those altitudes, definitely help with anything related to water vapor emissions, and of course no nitrogen oxide and all those. So with all those great things happening, how do you feel about the future of the industry? Are you optimistic we're going to solve our challenges?
Well, I'll answer that, and then I'm going to go back to you because I want to hear your answer to that question. I think there's tremendous momentum. It wasn't that long ago people were telling me that hydrogen was not going to work. And, I think the naysayers, are starting to quiet down a little bit because we're seeing so much progress in hydrogen. We're seeing a lot of progress in SAF, even in technologies we thought we wouldn't see for many years, right? Alcohol to jet seems like it's going to come even sooner. So there's a lot of momentum. There's more partnerships. There is more progress in other industries. I mentioned road transport. The sooner road transport electrifies, the sooner we're going to get more sustainable aviation fuel, and we'll get other resources. But I would love to hear your view on that.
course. Thanks, Jill. Yeah, so we are naturally optimistic, having started the company in this space and pushing the industry hopefully forwards. We have natural optimism about it. But echoing your comments, in the last 5 years since I started the company, we actually saw dramatic progress. 5 years ago, people only talked about offsets. Now we're gonna buy some Amazon forest somewhere, and then you have accounting issues with that, and there's not enough forest for everybody. Then people started talking about biofuels, while great, not really scalable, and now we are really in the real business domain where we are talking about technologies that can really scale. So synthetic fuel on the SAF side, hydrogen. These things all can scale, and you have all these great partners like Airbus and Rolls-Royce now also picking up momentum on hydrogen side as well. So you have the support of the ecosystem, of course. Airlines like yourselves create a lot of demand, signal a lot of demand, support companies like us and others in this space, which helps tremendously to activate the government interest, policy interest, and investor interest. So everything is coming together, and like you said, it's amazing to see all of these coming together right around and after the major shock to the industry that the pandemic was, and it was actually a great validation point from my perspective, because the industry had this existential crisis, and yet it found the energy and determination to think about its long-term future. So I'm super optimistic about it, and sounds like you are as well. And this whole event is about let's talk about the tech, let's talk about the business, and let's push it further forward. So really thank you for your thoughts and opinions, and keep pushing forward.
Yes, great to be here. Great to be partnering with you guys.
Thank you, Jill. All
Thanks.
right, thank you for that. Great opening of the second day, and now back to you, Dom, to introduce our next content.
Point of housekeeping again, just to remind everybody again, FAQs, we've got a few coming in, really good questions. Any that we don't answer, we will answer after the fact. But without further ado, great stuff from Jill and Val.